Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the July 5th meeting of Glens Falls Planning Board. We will begin this evening's meeting with the discussion and approval of the minutes from the June 7th, 2022 meeting. Let's start over here.
No comments. No comments.
Mr. Hall?
All good on my end.
No comment.
No comments. I have none either. Therefore, I make a motion that the planning board approves the minutes of the June 7th, 2022 meeting as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Passed. Thank you. Okay. Moving along, the first item under new business. Praxis Technology, owners of tax map 309.12.1-1, commonly known as One Naming Place, is proposing a local law to amend Chapter 220-6 of the zoning code of the City of Glens Falls to revise the zoning map to change the zoning district boundary from single-family, medium-density residential R1B to heavy industrial HI. This application requires an advisory opinion by the planning board to the common council. Is there anyone here representing Praxis Technology?
Mr. Chairman, due to my being the architect for Praxis, I will accuse myself from voting on this matter.
Thank you. And you are?
I am. Nice to see you. Edward Fitzgerald, attorney for Praxis Powder Technologies. And with me tonight,
Joe Pim, Vice President of Operations at Praxis.
Thank you.
I'm Seth Yellen, the Facilities and Engineering Manager at Praxis.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll stand a little closer. The parcel we're talking about this evening is a 6.2 acre parcel located at One Namick Place. It's at the end of Prines Island. It's located adjacent to a heavy industrial district, and you actually access it only through a heavy industrial district. It's currently owned by Andritz, which is a medical device manufacturer. My clients are also a manufacturing company, titanium extrusion manufacturing. Is that a good way to describe it? Well, titanium injection molding. They have a proprietary process, and they're actually a world leader in their field, and they currently have a facility in Queensbury, and they're looking to acquire this property and to move their manufacturing to Glens Falls, but we're looking to clear up the zoning on the parcel. Despite the current uses, which date back to at least about 1985, it was originally built for Namick as a medical device manufacturing facility with office space. The zoning was never updated, and the zoning remains the medium density residential zone. So we'd like to clarify that and have it be made heavy industrial, and that was the basis for the application to the county council, which, as you know, bounces it here for your comment. So we're here tonight to answer any questions you may have, if any. Both Seth and Joe can answer them. Probably as far as the plans for the site, not much would change. There's no immediate plans for new structures or changes to the building or the site layout.
Very good. Is that it?
That's all. Do you have any questions for us?
I'll let you know. Thank you. We'll start with our architectural consultant, Mr. Brown.
I have no comment.
I did not receive anything from the fire department nor the city engineer, so I'll take that as no comment from them either. We'll start over here with Mr. Cardy.
No comment.
Thank you. Mr. Hall recused himself.
You do like one count.
What?
No comments.
I'll get to that. I got it.
You got it.
Ms. Caldwell.
My only question is, because it's right next to Howland Cove Beach, what is the zoning with that? Like
And I think it's a park. that?
No?
Park Recreation. It's a PRD, Park Recreation District.
But there's no change.
But like it wouldn't impact.
No.
No, no, that, it's actually separated by some, other property here.
Yeah, there's at least one parcel in between the Havens Cove parcel.
Right.
Okay, that was all.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews?
No comments.
So you, again, just refresh me on what's the purpose of manufacturing, light manufacturing, or?
The zoning change would be for heavy industrial, but their actual use is more of a light industrial use.
Right, that's what I'm curious about. So it's extrusion process, attaining,
So we are a contract manufacturing company. So we manufacture mainly medical implantable devices for large OEMs, like Stryker Orthopedics, for example. So hip replacements and other types of components like that.
okay,
And most of our equipment is relatively small. Injection molding machines are probably some of the larger types of equipment. But right now we employ just over 50 people, and we're looking to expand. We're in 2 locations now, and we own one and rent a second. And this will provide us space to grow the business and grow the company and provide additional jobs for Glens Falls.
sounds good. And currently you have no plans for expansion yet?
We are maxed out on space right now. We looked at a 3rd building, but we'd prefer to consolidate in 1 building just for
Sure, but that's what I'm
logistics.
saying, at this site, you have
No.
immediate plans?
No, this provides about 3x what our current space needs are.
Good.
So,
Well, we certainly welcome you. And additionally, the Warren County, since it borders the property, it's in proximity to this, they had the opportunity to comment, and the county recommends approving this. So, that said, excuse me. I'll make a motion that Glens Falls Planning Board hereby submits the following advisory opinion to the Common Council. They should look with favor on the application of Praxis Technology. Bear with me. For zoning revision, zoning change at One Namath Place.
From single-family moderate density residential district R-1B to heavy industrial H for 1 parcel, tax map number 309.20-1-1, commonly known as One Namath Place, Glens Falls.
Good, thank you. So, you should look with favor on that. All in favor?
Is there a second?
Second.
Second?
Now, all in favor?
No.
Yes.
Any opposed? Very good. Good luck, and again, welcome.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Put it on.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
I've already done the proposed local law, so it'll be on next week's common council for public hearing, and then it could be adopted next week as well, possibly. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No, no, thank you.
Okay.
I'm good. Take all that.
I just want to offend you.
Take one.
Common Council? Did the Common Council?
No,
Oh, I think that's.
second and fourth Tuesday.
All right. Moving along, site plan review. Now, this we will not be taking any action on this. This is more of a sketch plan review. We're here to listen to the applicant, make their presentation, and give them any comments that we might have. So just want that, you know. Site plan review of Spring City Development Group LLC, owners of 31, 41, and 45 South Street, and 31 and 36 Elm Street, are seeking approval to renovate the existing structures, turn them into mixed-use buildings, as well as build a new structure for commercial/residential use. This application requires planning board review and approval. Again, there'll be no action taken, but we will listen to the applicant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Libby Carino. I'm a land use counsel for Spring City Development. I'm joined today by Scott Townsend, the architect on this project from SWBR, as well as members of the Spring City team who sit behind me, Larry Novick, Amber Mathias, and Lori Harris, all of which have particular expertise in what I think is arguably a complex project up on the screen. So I'm happy to take you through it. Scott is here as our technical expert to answer any questions that you might have, but there's also the Spring City team in case there's other questions on how the project will operate itself. So right now, I just thought we'd start. I know the screen is far away for some of you, so I apologize for that, but the red box indicates the areas of development, and as you heard the chair read, it's actually a number of parcels that are actually being considered jointly, and part of the reason for that is their close proximity, and they're all part of something that you may have heard a lot about, which is the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, for which Glens Falls received a significant amount of funds awarded, about $1.2 million for the mixed-use redevelopment of this corridor. In May of 2021, the city selected Spring City Development, which is a subsidiary of Bonaccio Construction of Saratoga Springs, as the developer for this portion of the DRI. So that's why we're here. And in April of 2022, Spring City and the city entered into our development agreement for what the city wanted to see and to ensure that the items that it received the funding for would come to fruition. In May of 2022, we began the process of applying for our IDA benefits and acquiring the land from the city and the LDC. In June, we filed an application for site plan review, which is why we're here. And we have a July application to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the reason for that is that the code requires in this area of the city to have full first floor commercial. So I wanted to highlight the fact that the application that you are looking at right now does not have that. We understand that. We look forward to making that case in front of the zoning board, but assuming that the zoning board must act first before we come back. So that's a little bit of the process we're undergoing right now. And July 5th today is our first planning board meeting to discuss this with you. So part of where we start from in looking at, site plan for such a large site with so many differing parcels that have existing buildings that are being rehabbed, they're in the historic district, there's tax credits, there's abatement issues, there's city streetscape issues, there's all kinds of different things. For this particular site plan review, what we wanted to discuss tonight, and this is why Scott is here, and I'll take you through that this is the topography, the development plan, some of our signage, waste disposal, how to get in and out of the site safely, the traffic patterns in and around that area, as well as our, must be doing a good job, landscaping and buffering, as well as our construction schedule. So those are some of the things we think we'll go over tonight. So the development plan for phase one, some of these buildings will look familiar to you. As you know, there has been a tremendous amount of success in downtown Glens Falls in the last 10 to 15 years in revitalizing some of Glen Street and Ridge Street, but South Street remains a challenge, and so we're here to try to work through that. So the buildings at issue for phase one are 36 Elm, 49 South, 41 South, and 45 South Street, all which you can see in the aerial pictures. You will note, I think, excuse me if I have my, there it is. But it doesn't show up on the screen. Isn't that funny? Okay, well, too bad. It's well, I do my best. Two of these buildings have been demolished. If you remember the old OTB building and the building next to Hot Shots, these have been demolished. So it's not quite accurate right now. So 36 we known as the Incubator Building, and it's roughly 16,000 square feet. little bit of the history on this is that it was a brownfield site, and it was going to be turned into first floor commercial space. This is not one of the ones where we're asking for an exception. All of the buildings in phase 1 will be zoning compliant. And there will be 2-bedroom units, 8 of them on the upper floors. 41 South Street, the old Sandy's. This is a building that Nacho Construction has owned for a number of years. It will also be part of this redevelopment. And here, same thing, commercial space on the ground floor, and then residential units up above. When we move to 45 South Street, it's also known as the Hot Shots Building, 6,900 square feet, same concept, retail, commercial, perhaps restaurant on the main floor, and then living space up above. Right now, 49 South Street is vacant, and as you can see from the site plan application, intends to be an outdoor or overflow or conversion space with the large gathering space in front of it. Very excitingly, the new buildings, this is phase 2 of our development plan. This is 25 to 33 South Street. This is about 3,500 commercial square feet on the main floor of the South Street side, not the Elm Street side, with 69 apartments up above. Here you'll note this is the historically located on the parcel of property where the pavilion structure is right now, and where there will be the lion's share of the residential, new residential units for the city. Just some of the few site plan overview elements that you'll see, and Scott will take you through this, is that we will be requesting from the planning board a parking waiver, not on the number of spaces. There is adequate spacing in a building adjacent to the site for which we have site control and can demonstrate that, but it is not within 300 feet. It's in 700 feet. So while there is adequate parking, it is a little bit farther out than we're used to, but we've brought some diagrams and some timing evidence for the planning board as well to show how actually close it really is from a walkability standpoint. And there's also a very interesting site access on the main floor, almost like a tunnel, and the rest of the building will be built up above it as an interesting architectural element that I haven't seen here in the city, which is neat. And then lastly, there'll be this pedestrian crosswalk that connects phases 1 and 2, or at least most of phase 1 and 2. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Scott to take you through the building and its design elements.
Thank you, Libby. Good evening. As Libby was saying, I'm Scott Townsend. I'm an architect, and I work in the Capital Region, and I've worked with Spring City since their conception and Venancio prior. We're excited about this project, and I'm excited for Glens Falls. It's a great opportunity. I've been in the business for a while, and not often do you get to do a project where you can do this much work at once and make an impact. So we are phasing it out, as Libby was saying, and she very clearly stated that. And I'll walk you through some of this, and I know some of this won't show up, but the 3 buildings that she was talking about, which is 36 Elm and 45 and 41 South Street, as she mentioned, just to reiterate, are the phase 1. They are going to get historic tax credits. So we're working with SHPO and National Park Service down in Washington, D.C. So they are going to be restored and regenerated, and it's going to be the uses she talked about. So that would be the first phase. And a couple of things that we're doing that's kind of unique. We are not doing the market center, as you know, but we are coordinating with them, and we are making a passageway. This is a good illustration of it, where you can see, thank you, Libby, going all the way through. We're connecting 41 South with 36 Elm above, so we can have an elevator in common areas and make it convenient and have some access.
So that, let me just interject there, so that common access, is that elevated or what? I mean, just...
Yeah, that access, there's 2 access, so I should be careful with my semantics. There's a bridge above, which connects the 2 buildings.
Right.
And you can walk underneath, so you have a pedestrian access at the street level. That goes all the way to the main building, which is what we're calling phase 2. The new building, and you can see it's a little askew. I'd point to it, but it doesn't work over here. But we're trying to get it all so it becomes very pedestrian friendly, and you can see some of the illustrations where we have some umbrellas and everything, where it becomes like an interior pedestrian pathway. So you also have very pedestrian-friendly streets, and Libby was showing the crosswalk. And
So, again, just so I'm understanding,
sure.
that's, where's Elm Street, where's South Street?
Oh, okay.
That's
Elm
Elm?
Street, that's Elm Street.
Right.
South is there, yep.
So, again, tying in the buildings on the east side of Elm and the west side, that walkway, is that surface walkway?
Yes.
Okay.
People can drive through it.
Okay.
Yeah, there will be traffic, but it's also a safe way to get across, and it's
Thank you.
Crosswalk on grade across Elm.
at grade, yes.
That's a show. That's showing there, right?
Yeah. on
It's-
the-
Yeah, you'll see it in a little bit when I go to
Okay.
next other drawings, yep.
Didn't mean to-
And these are fine, I just want to be clear, these are city streets, so it's not up to us to, we can make suggestions, obviously. And we'll work with you throughout this whole endeavor to make sure it works for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's the.
Oh, that's backwards. So this is the corner here, and this is the former Sandy's building, and you get a sense of scale. One of the things that we're trying to do is making sure the scale is appropriate, because some of the things you want to do is have the city grow, and this is an area that has had some dormancy. I know the theater is next to it, and we'll show you other things, but we're trying to work with the height so it's appropriate for all of the scale throughout the building. And you get a sense, this is looking down Elm Street, and you can see we're trying to make it very pedestrian friendly and comfortable and shaded, and it'll calm traffic down a little bit and also make it safe for everybody, go both ways. And you're starting to see the back of it a little bit. Over in the far areas where the market's going to be, we didn't show anything at this point because I know it's something that's a work in progress we're not involved in. But you start to see all the buildings and the character that we're trying to get in the urban fabric and help it grow naturally this way. And then this is actually elevations of it. And you can start to see the heights to the one side. There'll be an illustration coming up fairly soon where you'll see the theater building. You'll see the scale, but they're fairly similar, and I can go into details when we get that. But one of the things we're trying to do as architects is we're trying to do something that fits in and is very respectful to what the context is already. Obviously, the city has grown over 150, 200 years. So we want to make sure that we're blending in and we're part of that natural progression. So you see the patterns, you see the heights and everything. Again, what Libby pointed out earlier is that we are going to have commercial facing South Street, and that will be true on the Phase 1 buildings, which is the 41 and 45 South Street. There will be commercial on the lower floor, as well as the new building on South Street. And you're starting to see it go around. It's important, if you don't mind pointing out, Libby, where the lower floor of the Elm Street, right there on the lowest one, right there. Yeah, this is where you'll be able to get the cars in and out. And if you go to the right a little bit, this is the area where she was mentioning the zoning variance because it's required to have commercial on the lower floor. And I'll let Libby talk about why it's not, but those are residential units. They're more like townhomes, so they actually have doors and everything, entries to the street, so it gives it a nice scale. That's what we're trying to do. And again, you see it, and it's a combination of doing nice things with the streetscapes, so people can get through and everything, both auto and pedestrian, but also we have the nice little pathway in between, behind what we're calling Sandy's building, and going around to the new building. And the entries for those will be in that center portion. It just gives you a sense of scale. And you start to see the theater building next to it on the lower right. And that's the back. And the back is fairly shielded. Obviously, we're abutting the other existing parking lots. And again, and that's looking at it going up Elm Street to South Street. Yeah, and you notice we're going to try to interface between the market and our buildings.
So that building, excuse me, one of them, where you can't, that's the former quote incubator building, or was one?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, what you've shown here is we've been very careful about loading and garbage, and with the development team, they're very experienced with it. So we have it on each side of the new building. We're gonna have trash chutes coming down, but we're gonna keep like little small rolling dumpsters inside and bring them out just as we can. So it's not gonna be in anything that, we're very sensitive to making sure it presents well on every level. So it'll all be handled internally. A couple other things we did is we set it up so that nowadays with Uber and DoorDash and all those things that are happening, we actually put little set-asides in the parking lot so people can also carry up their groceries or take those. So we're trying not to congest the streets as best we can with what we have, and it's important that you know that we're trying to do that.
Good.
And fire access, we will work with the fire department. We work with the fire departments a lot and make sure we feel everything's safe and to their liking.
Yeah, make sure they feel that way.
Yeah.
Understood. We do have the driveway that comes off of Elm that goes to the back, and we know the heights that we've always worked with, so we're gonna make sure that what we've worked with will get all of their equipment through there and accessible, and make sure we have all the ways to get all the radiuses to work. But also, as you saw on the other ones, as you know, the site, there are other parking lots there that we can work with them. And we have the courtyard that's behind, that's for the residents, but it's also we're gonna make it so that they can pull in there for any kind of emergencies or anything like that. So we'll do that.
That setup is kind of similar to what's going on like Railroad Avenue down in Saratoga, right? There's one of those buildings there now that you drive underneath it to get to the parking out back. That's what.
Yeah, we've done a couple too. And I'm actually going to pass it back over. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So what we wanted to demonstrate, because it isn't so obvious from some of the mapping that's been shown, is the pathways and the walkways from the building. I believe it's referred to as the Travelers Building, where the designated spots will be for overflow. One of the reasons for that is, I think as Scott mentioned, I can go back a little bit, that there are 3 load and unload zones. And one of the reasons that that's so important right now is the focus on urban living. And urban living has changed dramatically, and we're seeing it across the country in single car ownership, single vehicular ownership in favor of delivery services, and from Uber to DoorDash, as Scott mentioned. And so trying to be forward thinking in the planning on this means that people are going to pull in, they're going to unload groceries and be able to pull away again. And so we don't have a situation where people will be carting groceries across town. Our goal and our hope is that the people who reside in these units will work in Glens Falls and will be able to walk to work most of the time. But if not, then for the spaces that are overflow, meaning beyond what the site itself can manage, there is we meet that demand. It's just that it is slightly farther than what's called for in the commercial district. So here you can see that 700 feet. So we didn't do it as the crow flies. It's actually a little bit shorter. We actually did it on the streets, just to be fair. And right, I mean, there's 2 pathways. One on the main streets is about 900 feet, 4-minute walk, timed out. So, and then if you go through, I believe it's an alleyway, so an existing alley along the daycare, for those of you who've been over there, it's about a 3-minute walk. So it's not an extensive walk for that of urban environment. The interesting thing is that there are 2 accessible spaces on the site, and all commercial spaces will be designated on the site. So commercial parking will be there because it will see the highest amount of turnover during the day. I wanted to go back for just a minute. I know Scott was at the mic, so I didn't want to interrupt him, but I think that this particular slide is likely the best at demonstrating the commercial versus residential ground floor discussion. So facing us with the awnings on the right-hand side is the lowest level of the South Street Tower. That building, that facade will be commercial. So as you come down South Street where there's the most intensive uses, all of those buildings will be commercial in their orientation on the ground floor. As you go back inward or down Elm Street, as we get more residential, what you see as you begin to travel down Elm Street on the right-hand side, with the back awnings, those are going to be the townhomes, like you'd see a brownstone walk up in New York City. So it would have that type of feeling, which in an urban environment is not unusual. So you would not enter the central hallway of the apartment building and travel all that way. You'd actually walk up into your unit. On the back side, and I'm not sure if I have that one, you can see the awnings on the left-hand side down on the first floor. Those will also be residential in that same way, but none of the commercial corridors, traditionally South Street, will have residential on the first floor. They will be commercial tenants. Okay, and with that, I think what I wanted to do was, as the chair mentioned, this was really an introductory meeting, so I want to thank you for your time in that, but also indicate that we are attempting to meet, this slide got a little, I'll read it to you because it looks like it got a little space-oriented. But what we're asking for tonight is not a vote on the site plan, but an ability to move the project forward, because we are trying to meet some pretty formidable deadlines come the fall for purposes of being able to break ground on phase 1. So the first would be for the board to accept the application as complete. We would ask for that tonight. We would ask that we commence the coordinated seeker review, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of agencies involved in this one. And then we have to commence the internal department review. We've already mentioned the fire department, and I know there are others, including the city engineers department, which we'd like to have those comments. And we'd also like there to be, because the code requires a public hearing for site plan, that we at least start the process of setting one, so that the next meeting in August we can come back and hear from the public as well. So those are our requests. Whether or not the board feels comfortable moving forward, that's what we're looking for. But no
That
requests.
sounds fine. With respect to the completeness of the application, I personally don't know if you'll probably accept that. Part of the application are the drawings, and those drawings need to show such thing for site plan, lighting, any signage. You don't have any refuse storage or any dumpsters on the outside, but that sort of thing. And we also always look at things like snow removal, very important. Whether you're going to have a place to store the snow or you're going to remove it as it accumulates, those kind of things. So those we want to see some point on the drawings. They weren't on the drawings that I had. Now maybe you.
So there was a second submission that was delivered on Friday, and so that may not have.
Right, but.
Because they are, go ahead, please, I'm sorry.
We have, there's a reason we have a deadline for submission, and don't misunderstand me. We want to work with you. This is, I think, personally, it's a great project. However, we do need a certain amount of time to review these things and get our questions in order. Additionally, we also need some concurrence from the fire department. You have to sit down with them, and also the city engineer. I don't know if you've done, or if they've commented on fire flow tests or that sort of thing for these buildings. That's obviously quite important. I don't know where that stands with.
It would stand as to send this set. That's actually what we're asking. There is no intent or expectation on our part that this would have been fully reviewed for tonight's meeting. We understood that. It was more so that is it in an informed fashion that would be appropriate to now begin the interdepartmental review and seek those kinds of comments.
But I just didn't want to misunderstood you. And you said, where's the effect of the submittal or whatever was complete? Is that?
Yeah, the letter says the board accept the application is complete.
Right.
It's a step inside the city code that the application is in good measure to be commenced review. I don't believe it's a vote that it has everything you want to see. I think that's the full site plan approval. That's my hope. Guilty as charged.
But anyway, I just want that understood.
Well, certainly between now and the next meeting, we will check the code against every single element that was submitted. If anything is missing, we'll attend to that.
Yeah, there is that checklist that's in the application.
Absolutely.
And it's like 2 or 3 pages worth of stuff. And if all of those items are addressed and there's some kind of response given to those items, it makes it makes our job really that much simpler as we go through it, to be able to say, we can go through and then say, yes, this has been addressed and we've looked at this. And it helps us when we get it to be able to go through that, because most of us grab that checklist and work our way through it as well.
And we do understand that. So we will address all of those issues, coordinate with all the appropriate agencies and folks that we need to. And we will also, we'll put together a letter pointing out things for everybody, just to make it easy so we understand. So.
Can I make one request?
Sure.
Can you send these in 11 by 17 and not 24 by 36?
We'd be happy to.
I knew you would, but for us, I mean, at least on my behalf, you know, trying to deal with these up here is crazy, and I
That's
would
what
much
we
rather.
asked for, we understand that.
Personally, myself, I would much rather have this size to deal with. This is so much easier.
And you are correct. We did follow the rules.
Yep.
So
We don't need credit.
we will coordinate with you prior to sending anything next time to make sure we're giving you exactly what you need.
Yep.
Size-wise. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and the printer too.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll start over here with Ms. Andrews. Do you have any comments?
I do have a couple things, just to get information, and maybe you can help me understand this. It's a historic district, so what does that mean, and what kind of recommendations or suggestions or requirements are going to be under that?
We're working with some consultants, and we work with SHPO, which is State Historic Preservation Office, and they end up being our liaison to the National Park Service, which is in Washington, D.C. So we end up getting federal and state tax credits. The criteria is I'm not the expert, but I've worked on them a lot, is really getting the building back to the original, not the intended use, but the way it presents itself. As much as it can be, obviously, it's gone through.
Visual.
Yeah.
The features.
Yeah, the features, and it's being respectful too, because the reality is it's gone through all of these buildings have gone through transformations and everything.
Right.
So what we do is we work very carefully with the consultants in the agency offices to make sure that anything we're doing, like replacing windows, you can't just replace and go and arbitrarily put in vinyl windows or something. You have to make sure they are respectful to what was there originally and show that. So there's a lot of diligency that goes into it, but what it does is it tries to do it so that it's something that is respectful of the past, that works.
I don't know what the Incubator Building used to look like, what it looks like now. I know what it looks like now, but you know, like what would that look like?
It actually, it looks, it's going to be hard to say this, it looks similar to that, except for picture like gridded windows in there and full of light, and it's very similar. It's an interesting, history is interesting when it comes to buildings, so we know a historic building when we see it, and then there's some that fall into the category of the Incubator Building that's kind of in that transition stage. So, and it's an eligibility, this will help you clarify, 50 years is kind of the criteria that we use. So if it's more than 50 years, it's deemed historic normally.
My other question is traffic flow. It would be nifty if it was just all pedestrians, because we talk a lot about the walkers, but I don't have a sense of how the traffic would flow for that many vehicles, because that is a considerable increase in the vehicles in that area. That would be in and out.
Yeah, do you mind going to, just a site plan, probably. Just a site plan. There. Yeah, the thing is that this area was when it was, the streets were built, they were built with fully occupied buildings. So right now it's not. So in terms of the zoning laws and capacity and everything, it should not have any problems handling the traffic flow. But it's going to go in, you see where the driveway is to the back parking lot? That's where most of the residents, or some of the residents, and as Libby was saying, obviously we're going to have some people that are remote, and hopefully we do get a lot of people living in Glens Falls, so that's the best way to handle traffic. But the traffic pattern itself will be very similar as it is now in terms of South Street and Elm Street. intersections. These are mostly residential units, so you're going to see traffic patterns that are going to go with residential units. Hopefully a lot of them are not driving. You can't control that totally. So, but these roads should be anywhere with no problem. They're city grade for this kind of density without a problem. So, I don't know if that addressed your concern.
Yeah, does the, commercial, access have priority to the parking? That seems to be what you're saying.
So the commercial spaces will be designated. There are 11 of those. And I think to Scott's point, what he's indicating is that I think the City of Glens Falls code reflects this, which is when all of this was designed, these buildings were already there. So when we say this is a significant increase in traffic, it's actually not. It's bringing it back up to what it was. That's more, I think, what is the intent here. What's new is the parking. So, and would that, will commercial patrons be able to park? And the answer to that is yes.
Just a question, what happened to 31 Elm? There's talk of 36, and then 31 is just sort of mentioned, but.
There's one. Go back. I'm so terrible with the numbers. You think by now I know them all, but I don't.
You mean 41 now?
41?
41. So 31 and 36 would be,
Right. So I'm not sure.
it just identified that they never like what to do with the parking. Was that the parking?
Yeah.
Is that the parking area? Okay, that's why.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
Yeah, just to help a little bit, 41 and 45 are the two that are on South Street that exist, that are not parking lots, that were hot shots at one point in the Sandys.
Yeah, we've marked the demolished. Sorry. We've marked the demolished buildings on this one, so you can see that they're actually no longer there.
Yep.
Can you drive in from South Street into the
No, the entrance will be from Elm.
Elm only, right?
Yep.
Okay.
As it stands right now, there's an interconnection
Yeah.
between New Way Lunch
Right.
and the city garage, the city lot. I was the city garage, the city lot. In an R iteration, that's going away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it wouldn't be
So really, the only traffic in and out is on Elm Street.
Elm Street, right?
Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Does that help you?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Karen. Appreciate that.
And then the only other one was that the first floor was to be not to be residential, so that kind of to be up in the air a little bit.
We have to seek approval from the zoning board, and one of the ways, and again, not as a preview to any of this, is the availability of commercial space in Glens Falls as it stands today, plus the fact that this is an entire block redevelopment, that there will be ample commercial space in the other buildings. And so this is not a building by building, this is actually a 2-block revitalization. So looking at it and asking the city to look at it more globally than building by building. I can understand why if you're doing a one-off, you want to not let everybody do that, but this is, as you can see, many buildings with a lot of variety of uses and not to the exclusion of commercial. It will be on the site. It's just at numbers that the project cannot support financially.
Okay, thank you.
We'll send you 11 by 17s next time.
Yeah.
My one question is the new building, will you be working with historical architects to design it?
So Scott is a historical architect. So, right, you're talking about,
Like to make it match the rest of the city?
absolutely. So that's, please go ahead, Scott. I was giving you an intro.
Yes. No, in all seriousness, yeah, we, it's part of our DNA in our firm. I can't speak for everybody, but we want it to be one of those things when you see it, go, oh yeah, it always felt like it was here. So we're going to do that. I do know we're going to have more reviews, so we're not just going to disappear. We're going to keep presenting it, and we encourage your feedback because we want everybody to feel good about it. So the answer is yes. We we were going to. Obviously, the thing that's different nowadays when they first built them is the technology and materials of it and the costs. So we've got to all balance that out, but we are certainly going to make it work as best we can.
Is that it?
I
Thank you.
emailed him because I didn't really hear it, so I do have to go.
I may have forgotten to push that.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. One of our members, yes.
Do you want, we're okay?
Mr. Hall?
So I've been through these as much as I could, having only gotten a few days ago. And the presentation certainly helps. I think that the reuse of the three buildings, obviously the Incubator Building, you can't do anything to hurt that. Okay. Anything you do is going to be an improvement. I do agree that, my earliest memory of it, and I've only been here since '85, but projected steel windows, it looked like a factory warehouse building. It always has, as far as I know. People who've lived here longer than I probably have a better feeling for that, but as long as I can remember. The Sandy's building, obviously it's got some character, and from everything that I've seen thus far in these, that character is maintained. I mean, it looks like, the first floor is gonna be, I've been upstairs in that building. You got your work cut out for you. Same with
We're actually gonna put windows
where boards are.
Yes.
Yeah, same with Hot Shots.
Okay.
That building's, certainly got some challenges with it. I like the idea of the second floor connection between the residential uses on the Incubator Building and on the Hot Shots building. The ground sidewalk, the area that's going between those buildings, and the fact that going around behind Sandy's and into the front of, or into the angled entry, that angled piece between the South Street and the Elm Street, that's your vertical, getting to the upper floors.
To clarify that a little bit, the one that's facing Elm Street, that's parallel to it, that's all residential for the most part, and you're right. And the one on South Street, obviously, we have the commercial on the first floor, like we're talking about. The center part is the vertical circulation, the elevators, stairs, and some visual.
Yep. Yeah, and some of that stuff. So I like the way that that's kind of broken up that way, and the access to the Elm Street parking lot coming underneath the building, similar to that one that I mentioned is down in Saratoga. I think that's a good use of that. And it doesn't really disturb anything that's beyond it. So I think that there's some things there. As far as the connection, the walking connection to the other spaces that are under contract with the city, I'm good with that. I mean, it's, as you say, the intent here is to try and get the people to walk, who live there, to walk and to do things downtown. So I don't think that a 4-minute or a 3-minute walk, I mean, in this picture, you can almost see where they are.
Yeah.
So it's really not that far away. And I think that the more, the younger that your people that are living there, I think you're gonna get more of a walking type crowd. So yeah, those things, as far as the application and the completeness of it, the only thing that I did notice is that the Part 2 impact assessment has been filled out, and that gets filled out by us.
That was absolutely an oversight, and the corrected Part 1 was submitted on Friday.
Okay.
So counsel for the applicant found that and submitted the correct one. She knows better.
Outside of that, no, I think that the application, everything that I've looked through on it, like I said, limited review of it, but it looks like a good application to me, so.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Brown, our architectural consultant.
As Chairman Bruno has noted, there's a notable checklist of items that needs to be part of this site plan review. And looking at it, what's presented is very general, but what about things if it's going to contain residential, what about outdoor amenities for children, for mothers and children, and soft places like that? That would be adequate for this size.
Yeah, you might want to go to another one. I think there's another one.
I was
that's
trying to
showing.
see where it has,
No.
where's the best one, the rear, here Larry. Which one is it?
Yeah, to answer your question while we're looking for it, there you go. We have an outdoor area that is going to be enclosed, and you can see it next to the parking area, between the parking area and the building. It'll be accessed from the common, the elevator lobby and everything that comes down.
So most anybody in that complex can access that space?
They can, yeah. We're gonna put a little barbecue and everything, so we're gonna shape it a little bit better as we go, but the intent is that it's for anybody that lives there.
I'm mainly interested in the two historic buildings at Elm and South Street, the two taverns, because the public has a lot of vested interest in those buildings. They were among the prominent buildings that got facade grants from the city, and structural studies of the Incubator Building are probably sitting in a dusty file somewhere.
We have them.
Good. But no, those two buildings of any on South Street, I personally think have a lot of historic character in their outward look. And I'm happy to see the basic buildings remain, and I hope that the exteriors are preserved to as much extent as they can be. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, we are planning on rehabbing those buildings so that they'll come back to their old majestic self.
Yeah. I tried to look at it, but the little street trees are in the front.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Riccardi.
Yeah, I got a questions. You're using your application to the site plan review, right? So how would you do the two buildings? You want a site plan for each one, or one?
So the site plan application per the code can be segmented building by building. So we've applied for an entire site plan showing the interconnection of the buildings, the traffic flow, grading, those types of things as called for in the code, so that the planning board has an opportunity to see it comprehensively.
So you've got 5 buildings, right?
Correct.
Okay. So this sounds like a site plan or PUD problem. We can't. I don't think we can address all these buildings individually or as a group.
Well, let me start from the top of what I think I heard. I think there was a mention of a PUD or planned unit development, right? And in New York, that's generally considered specialty zoning, where you would draft zoning particular to the project. In this particular case, we're actually pleased to indicate that the entire project is zoning compliant, with the exception of the commercial versus residential on the first floor that I mentioned. So we wouldn't be eligible for a PUD because we don't want the zoning changed. The project has been designed compliantly. So if there are concerns about the use orientation, I'm pleased to say we don't have those in this case.
Well, okay. So my one question is, we've got 5 stories on South Street. I think that's incompatible with the general layout of South Street. But I mean, maybe you could put them on Elm Street side instead of, 3 stories on South Street and 2 stories on Main Street.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You're talking about the South Street building being 5 stories, correct? If you notice the building, we depicted all the buildings accurately to the heights. So the theater building there, we're a little bit higher than that on the facade side, even though it's tricky because we have a number of stories that are a little bit larger, but the building height or the floor-to-floor height of the building next door is much higher. And so when you look at the theater building, it's not that much lower than our facade. And then when you count the fly area, which is the back part of it, it's much higher in that. So and as you go into the center of town, you get much bigger buildings very quickly within a block or so. So I do hear what you're saying, but we feel like it's compatible and it works. The one thing I do want to point out that we're going to articulate and detail it a little bit more, but if you notice the top floor is a little bit different, and we've done this before in the past where you have 4 floors, then you have a cap, and then you set back the wall a little bit and change the color of it, so it appears like a 4-story building as you're walking down the street. And the 5th floor kind of disappears a little bit. But we'll be happy to show you this details moving forward.
There is a statement in the application that says 75 spaces at Monument Square with 700 feet within 700 feet, but the code says 300 feet.
That's correct.
So
It's a parking waiver that we're requesting, where the planning board has the authority to waive parking requirements for urban uses in this district, and so as part of our application, we are asking for that waiver.
okay, all right. That's accepting. Okay, and there's a statement the former application that says majority of which will be occupied by commercial uses, wants some common space in circulation for residential uses. What's that mean?
If it would be helpful, if you would hand me what you're reading, because I'm having trouble hearing, I could actually read if you'd be willing. I just can't see what you're referring to, and I'm having trouble hearing. I apologize.
Is it where you start Peter 41 South Street building?
No. Yeah, but the 3 buildings, one for 41.
Do you want to look at
If it may approach.
this? Sure. I think his question is, and circulation for, I think he's questioning.
So 41 South. Just go back to it for a second. And I can actually ask Larry maybe to clarify on this one. So Larry, the question is, the application indicates the majority of which will be commercial uses on the ground floor, but I think we are all commercial on the ground floor, is that correct?
All of which building?
41 South.
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe that's an error. 41 South Street will be all commercial, is that the question you're asking me? Yes, sir.
So there's no commercial, or a lot of, I guess it goes to exclusively commercial, 41 South Street,
Yes, sir.
46, 45.
So your
South
variance for the first floor residential is for which
Is
building?
limited to the 2 new buildings only.
Yeah.
We will not be seeking any variances in the existing buildings.
So where it says majority, that should
Believe
be
it's
all.
Yeah, I believe it's just, it's word, go ahead.
I was just going to clarify.
This-
Please,
this
go
is
ahead. Thank you,
the
Karen.
same thing. This is the same thing like 41, 45, and 36.
I just want to, architecturally speaking, it's a very minor thing, is that our staircases and everything that serve the residential for fire access and everything do come down to the ground so that they can safely exit in case of fire. So, but the rest of it will be commercial.
Okay. Oh, good.
But I think that's an accessory use to that would be my,
That's correct.
that would be my interpretation. That's an accessory use and it's a permitted accessory.
Right, it doesn't make it residential because it's
Correct,
staircase.
it's the staircase, it's the access, so.
Well, I think there's certainly not enough parking, but that's a code problem. You have 90 places on residential, and got 75 units that doesn't add up to have to 1.5, and you don't have parking places on Monument Avenue. I don't know where it is, but anyway.
Again, I'm having trouble hearing, so I apologize. I'm not sure if the comment was, there is designated parking for the overflow of 75 spaces in the Travelers Building, where there's 2 red lines connect. The red lines are shown as the distance to travel on foot.
On your final plans, something that would be helpful would be a parking chart, a calculation showing what's required, how many are on the site and how many are adjacent or connected. To show that, just to show that the code is met. The only waiver that you're asking for is the travel distance.
Yeah. The code actually allows for adjacent parking, so long as you can demonstrate site control.
Yep.
That's it for now.
Thank you. I had no other comments. I think we covered most of it.
Can I touch on the height issue? No.
One question.
Yes.
This is not a complete application, right? Because it says, one of the applications, or one of the restrictions says the board application must be complete for the 45 days, 45 days of, yeah, I don't.
For the setting of a public hearing.
I'm sorry?
For the setting of a public hearing. 45 days for the setting of a public hearing.
Yeah, so I don't think that is complete, so this application is not complete, so it's not
We've already discussed that.
that's true?
Yeah.
You don't want
So
to,
the clock hasn't, when
you
we
want
getting
to
it,
start
the
the
clock hasn't
45,
started for the 45 days.
you want to start the 45 days now. That's not a complete application.
If there was an intent to set the public hearing, I think maybe I'm losing the thread a little bit. If there's an intent to set the public hearing and the public is going to get notice, whether it's in 1 day or the max of 45 days, the board does intend to set the public hearing, right? Okay, so the only way that provision works against us is if we tried to hold the board accountable for not setting the public hearing, which we don't intend to do, because I believe there's an intent to set it, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's the answer.
It's a maximum of 45 days.
What?
It's a
Maximum
maximum
of
of 45
45
days.
days.
So if they've made an application and we don't hold a public hearing within 45 days, then they can come back to us.
Yeah, but it's not complete, this is not a complete application, so that.
We're not setting the public hearing.
Right, the public hearing wouldn't be set until we receive the next application from, which will be a complete application.
Well, that's why, that wasn't my question. What that was my question, was
Well, the plan is to come back.
45 days.
A maximum of 45 days.
Maximum of
They're gonna
45.
submit us, they're gonna make a submission in July. And we'll post a public hearing, we'll post our normal public notice for the public hearing to be held within 45 days of receiving that application.
For the
Could be 2
August
weeks
meeting.
after that.
Right,
Right.
August meeting. So you're gonna resubmit additional documents, because now you know lighting, snow removal, trash removal, you're gonna look at the checklist on the city website, and you're gonna resubmit everything again, and then once we get that, the notice goes out,
Here's
and
the
you can
thing.
have your public hearing in August.
See, here's the thing, you can't go beyond the 45 days. You can do it in that
Up to.
time.
I understand that, but when I submit the application next month,
This month.
well,
They'll submit it in July, this month, for the August meeting. Our submission date is 2 weeks prior to the meeting.
okay, yeah,
Yep.
but if it isn't complete, then you got 45 days beyond that. This says application have to be complete.
We're not setting the public hearing. That's if you're setting the public hearing, you need a complete application.
So we'll make that determination when that application comes in
And
July.
The code officer will make that
Right,
application
that's-
if the application is complete. It'll be put on and noticed.
We're not doing it now. I
Right.
understand that.
Yeah, no, but, yeah, but if the application not month is not complete,
Right.
because they have to.
Well, the applicant is saying it's going to be complete, and if there's missing something, you often, very often, set your public hearing. We come in, you have your public hearing, resolutions are passed, and sometimes they may have to submit, it's a conditional resolution, a conditional approval, because certain additional documents need to be provided. Peter, we do that all the time.
Yeah, but.
And the public will have notice. Actually, this was noticed.
This is a project of 5 buildings, and there's gonna be questions.
Of course.
Yes.
So, if you're gonna set 45 days next month, it's not,
We don't have to have.
The 45 days is a maximum number.
We don't have to.
We
if
won't do that
determine-
until it gets approved. What he's concerned about, I think, is that if next month doesn't approve because there's too much still loose, then the 45 days.
Oh, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Right.
Right. And that would be a table, in that case, it would be a tabled motion, and that continues, that's a continuance of the
This
45
this
days.
is all predicated on that submission
Right.
being completed.
I understand that, but, there's gonna be questions, and 45 days, not compliant.
We'll deal with
I
that.
think you're hung up on the semantics of 45
Okay,
days.
let me offer this, because I've done this a number of times. The applicant is willing to waive the 45-day restriction.
Okay.
Thank you.
My question that I had was on height that was brought up.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, in the CCD, we are, the maximum height is 100 feet.
Correct.
Right.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
There's
And
no,
I-
There's
they're
no,
within the height.
there's
You're not
no,
asking for a variance within the height, because they're
Right.
within the limits.
Just, if
We're not
I
doing
may,
architectural review, right?
what's that?
Are we, go ahead, sorry. Right, so it's code compliant, and I don't believe that mass and scale is part of the review for this district, so I believe we're compliant on all points with the height.
Right.
yeah, I will, I'll clarify the numbers. You are correct. 100 feet is our max we can go. Our max height at the highest part is 70 feet. Yeah, the vast majority of it is somewhere between 60 and 65, depends on our final detail.
Yeah.
We looked at that.
Yeah, that was the first thing because there's not, I know in some areas there's a stories maximum as well, but that's not as part of the
Not in this-
CCD. That's not. Okay.
Okay, so just kind of wrap things up. Yeah, you heard my comments at the beginning. There was a number of things, and that they're actually, most, if not all of them, are on that checklist.
Yep.
So take a look at that. I'm sure you will. Other than that, to me, it looks like a great project for the city. Anything else?
We do need to declare ourselves, we do need to declare the fact that we're going to be lead agents
That's the
to get that running.
one thing we need.
Mhm.
So
You're not acting on secret.
We're not acting on secret tonight.
Just
Well,
declaring.
we do need to make a resolution that it is the intent. Would you like me to make that right now?
Yes.
I would hereby make a resolution that the planning board of the city of Glens Falls intends to be lead agent for this project. That begins the 30-day clock for seeker, for SHPO, coordinated review.
Coordinated review. to
Coordinated
those
review
involved
with any
in
other
this.
interested agency, so,
I'll say. All in favor?
aye.
Anything else?
I believe that's it.
Thank you
You
very
need
much.
anything from us? You need?
No. The comments were very clear. We appreciate all the time that you've given already, and we look forward to seeing you in August with a complete application.
Great.
Thanks.
Now, the only other thing I had quickly was, you know, this phase 1 and phase 2, just clarify that for me.
So part of the fact, I think it's actually what Mr. Accardi was raising, is that some of this project involves the rehabilitation of existing buildings, which would be nice to get started. But the development and the full-scale siting of the larger apartment complex would take more time, particularly from the funding side. So that's what we internally are calling it phase 1 and phase 2, because I think the public would see work on the existing structures before they would see a ground break on the second building. That's all.
So phase 1 would be the existing building.
Correct. We
And
get
it's
the
really-
streets, we start work on the streetscape right away.
And it's really just an internal thing for you guys. It's not,
Yeah.
it's all one project. It's just how internally, how you're
Correct.
breaking them up. There's gonna be just one application.
One
I'm easily
application, right?
confused.
Well, there has to be only one application because our code does not allow segmentation.
Right.
That
That's
was what I
that's
tried to
what I
know,
did.
we're just not permitted to do this any other way.
And what is your overall time frame, give me a sense for that?
Overall timeframe?
For the record.
Thought I asked you there.
Our goal is to start this fall
Right.
with phase 1. It would probably take about 12 months to complete that process. I think, you know, some of the phase 2 timing relates to the completion of that phase, what's going to happen with the farmers market area and that pavilion. But our goal would be to start that upon completion of phase 1, to start the second building. That would probably be about another year. So a
you would
2-year
run them
duration.
Concurrently?
What's that?
You wouldn't do those concurrently?
I think they probably would overlap a little bit in the middle, but I think the timing of them will likely be a full year on the rehab and a full year on the new construction.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? That's all I had. If we have nothing else, make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.